And if you're after one of the absolute most powerful gaming laptops in 2023, well, this'll do you then. The MSI Titan GT77 HX boasts some of the latest, freshest tech that literally only just launched, including a 13th gen Intel Core i9 chipset, Nvidia's GeForce RTX 4090 GPU, you got a 4K 144Hz display. It's an absolute f***ing unit, beefier than a heart attack grill quintuple bypass burger with a side help and a steak. When they called it a Titan, they really weren't pissing about. And I've been testing out the MSI Titan GT77 HX for about a week now with some serious gaming and benchmark action, so here's my review. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So let's start with the design, and this MSI Titan is an absolute beast. It's a 17-inch laptop that weighs 3.3 kilos. It just about fits in my biggest backpack that I own, and of course if you are lugging it around all day, you can expect quite a workout for your shoulders. As far as the aesthetics go, well, it's fairly unassuming from the front, as long as obviously you ignore / turn off the disco-rific keyboard RGB shenanigans. But the real action here on the Titan GT77 is definitely around back. For a start, there's that arse. I mean, this is a twerk-worthy arse right here. I mean, this thing juts out a solid 3 inches from that screen hinge, which is pretty impressive stuff. You got no room for any ports or anything around back. It is vents all of the way. And not only is it massive, but can your arse do this? This rear end can turn into a mini disco on command, thus bringing to life any room that you put it in. The Titan GT77 HX is solidly constructed in all areas. The lid is suitably stiff, so that thing is not going to be bending around. As with most black laptops, however, it does get a little bit smudgy once you start handling it. As you can see there, I've either got very greasy fingers or this thing just picks up grime all too easily. And as if the RGB disco keyboard and back end weren't enough, the MSI badge also flashes. As for your ports, well, they are evenly distributed between the two sides of this MSI gaming laptop. You've got a pair of Thunderbolt 4 ports with DisplayPort through pass. You've also got yourself a separate mini DisplayPort connection. You've got yourself 3 Type A USB 3.2 connections. You have a full-sized SD memory card slot. And last but definitely not least, a good bit of Ethernet action if your Wi-Fi isn't up to a bit of online gaming. So usually when I review laptops, I would now bang on about the display and the keyboard and everything, but let's face it, the exciting bit of this MSI Titan is the performance, so let's jump straight onto that. This absolute unit is powered by an Intel Core i9 13950 HX chip that runs up to 5.5 GHz with 8 performance cores, 16 efficiency cores, and a total of 32 threads. And that is backed here by 64 gigs of DDR5 RAM. You do have 4 memory slots in total for expansion up to 128 gigs. You've got the usual MSI Center shenanigans for monitoring the various resources on this laptop. You've also got the dedicated gaming modes. You've got your GPU switch, you can tinker with the display settings, all kinds of stuff. And of course the usual overclocking shenanigans, including Intel's Extreme Tuning utility if you really want to go deep, or the Intel Speed Optimizer if you want to keep things simple. And when it comes to the MSI Titan GT77's visuals, it's more top-end tech because you've got Nvidia's latest GeForce RTX 4090 laptop GPU with a respectable 16 gigs of GDDR5 RAM. And as you can probably tell from the rather enormous vents around back, you've got some proper hardcore cooling tech packed in here. And yes, the internal fans do get rather noisy when they're on full blast, but thankfully they do the job admirably. This laptop stayed cool in all of the usable areas, did not rise above a worrying temperature, and that performance did not throttle once, even when I was literally benchmarking and gaming on this thing for hours. And speaking of benchmarking, if you happen to be a fan of cold hard stats to prove just how beefy a gaming laptop is, well, this bit is really going to toast your marshmallows. If you do want to skip over this section, all you need to know is that the Titan GT77 HX 2023 absolutely bloody crushed it, spaffing out the highest scores I've personally ever seen and beating some of the biggest and best gaming laptops out there. So for instance, in 3D Mark, the regular Time Spy test coughed out a score of almost 20,000. There was literally thousands more than the previous generation of this MSI Titan, with an estimated Battlefield 5 performance over 185 frames per second at 1440p. Time Spy Extreme fared just as well, topped 10,000 quite comfortably with a performance estimate of 155 plus, and Port Royal almost hit 14,000 on each run, again a big leap over the previous gen. Sticking with 3D Mark, I also ran the DirectX ray tracing test, and this came back with an average frame rate of just over 70 frames per second, another very respectable score. And the Titan also absolutely smashed the TimeSpy stress test with a frame rate stability over 99%, can't complain there. But of course we can't forget about Intel's 13th Gen tech, so I also ran 3D Mark's CPU benchmark to test the chip, and this delivered a score of 13,401 using all available threads, dropping to 1,158 for a single thread run. And then I swapped over to Cinebench 23, which popped out a multi-core result of 29,543, a gnat's pube behind the AMD Ryzen Threadripper 2990WX, and a single core result of 2040 as well. Some very meaty performance indeed, but what about the actual gaming? Well, Forza 5 ran absolutely beautifully. I benchmarked this game at 4K resolution with the extreme settings and got a pleasingly stable frame rate over 60 frames per second every iteration, while at Full HD resolution with absolutely everything in the settings maxed out, including the ray tracing, it still pumped out an average score well over 100 frames per second. I decided to stick with the 4K visuals and absolutely loved bombing about in my little car. So I still suck at the game, obviously, don't really know what I'm doing, but hey-ho. Next up, I chucked on Uncharted 4, and I ran this at 4K resolution with, again, everything maxed out. And this ran with a consistent frame rate, which hovered sort of between 70 to 80 frames per second, according to FrameView. There were certainly no dropped frames on there, and it looked perfectly smooth to my knackered old peepers. Those graphics were absolutely stunning, the lighting effects and everything, gorgeous stuff. Skanky Panamanian prisons never looked so good. And then of course I had to bung on a bit of my old favourite Doom Eternal. I ran this at ultra nightmare settings across the entire board, 4K resolution again, and it stuck to the maximum 144Hz level the entire time. Again, gloriously smooth, beautiful graphics, really enjoyable. And when I say that those graphics are stunning, that's helped along by the 17.3-inch mini LED display with its 4K resolution. I think I might have mentioned that a few times already, 3840 by 2160. I turned the studio lighting all the way up, and then I also maxed out the screen brightness here on the MSI Titan, and thankfully had no trouble seeing what was going on, even in quite murky fare like Doom Eternal, helped along by the fact that you do have that anti-glare finish. Of course, gaming outdoors would be a very different scenario, and sadly there is no HDR support here on the MSI Titan GT77, but the contrast was still sharp, those blacks still look reasonably deep, colours are nice and punchy, and it does max out at 144Hz as well, so creamy smooth for supported games. The stereo speaker setup's pretty good on the MSI Titan GT77 as well. They are upwards firing speakers, so you do get that audio blasted right at your lugs. But of course still preferred gaming with a headset just to get that proper surround sound experience. And no complaints at all with that mechanical keyboard. It's a nice firm action, certainly does the job for your more fast-paced action titles and the rest. And pretty good sizing for the keys, although that number pad section does feel a little bit squashed over here on the right side. And yes, as you can see, they flash all the colours of the rainbow, pretty much any colours your heart desires, in fact. For your storage, you've got dual 2TB NVMe SSDs bunged inside of this thing, and they are so nippy that loading times are pretty much negligible. And I mean, just look at these Crystal Disk Mark scores that are being spunked out right here. I mean, bloody hell. And you've also got yourself an extra PCI Express 5 slot if you do want to expand. Unfortunately, it's not all great news here on the MSI Titan GT77. For one, you've only got a 720p HD webcam up front. Not a full HD effort, which is a bit of a shame because quite a few laptops nowadays are coming with that 1080p option. And as you can see, the picture quality ain't fantastic either, pretty grainy and a bit crap, frankly. And that's with reasonably respectable lighting in this place as well. But I guess one good thing is you do have a webcam shield, which you can just slide it across like so, nice and easy if you do want to disable the webcam in a pinch. And the Ethernet support here is killer E3100G, but to be honest, I just stuck with the Wi-Fi 6E support, which seems to do the job absolutely perfectly, even though I'm on a mesh Wi-Fi network. No dropouts or anything, all good. Of course, as with most gaming laptops, the battery life is rather limited. If you're just messing around, just doing, a bit of web browsing and stuff like that, you can only expect around 2.5 to 3 hours of use before this thing absolutely conks out, especially if you're at that 4K resolution. And if you're gaming, well, an hour or two tops, depending on obviously what title you're playing, what graphics settings you're using, etc. But you want to keep it plugged in to maximize that power anyway. So there you have it, my lovelies. That is the MSI Titan GT77 sporting a 13th generation Intel Core i9 chipset and that Nvidia RTX 4090. And if you want something that's going to get the absolute best out of all of your games for now and for the foreseeable future as well, then this will definitely do the job. So what do you reckon? Are you tempted by the Titan GT77? It'll be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do plug, subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!